They actually believe that there is indeed a different and higher power simply than humanity, and that is not about them thinking of heaven and hell in some sort of old-fashioned sense of trying to terrorize people into submission to religion. They actually think of it as about how you fulfill your purpose as a human being in the service of others. And so, you know, when we say, well, that could be done by humanism, yes, it could. But the fact is, for many people, it's driven by faith. And so, yes, it's true, you can find examples of where religion has deepened the divide in countries in sub-Saharan Africa. You can also find examples of where religion has tried to overcome those divides by preaching what is the true message of religion, which is one of human compassion and love.
Hitchens, let's have you come back on that, because not just Northern Ireland, but Iraq, a war that you supported, religion played an important role, arguably, in the success of putting together post-invasion Iraq.
I only think we should do this because the two questions were in effect the same and both very well phrased. And because I never like to miss out a chance to congratulate someone on being humorous, if only unintentionally. It's very touching for Tony to say that he recently went to a meeting that bridged a religious divide in Northern Ireland. Well, where does the religious divide come from? 400 years and more in my own country of birth, of people killing each other's children, depending on what kind of Christian they were, and sending each other's children in rhetoric to hell, and making Northern Ireland the place the most remarkable in Northern Europe for unemployment, for ignorance, for poverty, and for, I would say, stupidity too. And for them now to say, maybe we might consider breaching this gap, well, I should bloody well think so. But I don't see how. If they'd listened to the atheist community in Northern Ireland, which is a real thing, and if they'd listened to the secular movement in Northern Ireland, which is a real thing, and I know many people who suffer dreadfully from membership in it, not excluding being pulled out of a car by a man in a balaclava and asked, are you Catholic or Protestant? He said, I'm Jewish atheist, actually. He said, well, are you a Protestant Jewish atheist or a Catholic? You laugh. You laugh, but it's not so funny when the party of God has a gun in your ear at the same time. And that was in Britain, and still is to some extent, until recently. Rwanda. Do I say that there would be no quarrel between Hutu and Tutsi, people in Rwanda? Belgian colonialism, I think, made it worse, probably, but there are no doubt innate ethnic differences, or there felt to be in Rwanda. But the fact of the matter is, Rwanda is the most Christian country in Africa. In fact, by one account, that's to say numbers of people in relation to numbers of churches, it's the most Christian country in the world. And the Hutu power genocide, at any rate, was preached from the pulpits, actually the pulpits of the Catholic Church, as many of the people we are still looking for, wanted in that genocide, are hiding in the Vatican, along with a number of other people who should be given up to international justice, by the way. Quite a number of people. So, since Tony seems to like religious people best when they're largely non-practicing, but just basically faithful, I'll grant him that much. I say that it's not entirely the fault of religion that this happened in Rwanda, but when it's preached from the pulpit, as it was in Northern Ireland and in Rwanda, it does tend to make it very, very much worse. Thank you.
Tony, just briefly come back on that, because you were intimately involved in the search for peace in Northern Ireland, and I assume you had a very different perspective of the role that faith played in the resolution of that conflict.
Yeah, and I work do work in Rwanda. Look, first of all, I think it really would be bizarre to say that the conflict in Rwanda was a result of the Catholic Church. I mean, Rwanda is a perfect indicator of what I'm saying, which is you can put aside religion and still have the most terrible things happen. I mean, this was the worst genocide since the Holocaust. It was committed on a tribal basis. Yes, it's true, there were members of the Catholic Church who behaved badly in that context of Rwanda. There were also, by the way, members of the Catholic Church and others of religious denomination who stood up and protected and died alongside people in Rwanda. So, you know, and as for Northern Ireland, yes, of course, Protestant and Catholic, absolutely right, but you couldn't ignore the politics of the situation in Northern Ireland. It was to do with the relationship between Britain and Ireland going back over many, many centuries. So my point is very simple. Of course religion has played a role, and sometimes a very bad role in these situations, but not only religion. Yeah. And what is at the heart of this is we wouldn't dream of condemning all of politics, because politics had led to Hitler or Stalin, or indeed what has happened in Rwanda. So let us not condemn the whole of religion, or say that religion, when you look at it as a whole, is a force for bad, because there are examples of where religion has had that impact. And so I think actually Rwanda and Northern Ireland are classic examples, even the Middle East peace process. I mean, yes, I agree you can look at all the religious issues there, but let's not ignore the political issues either. And frankly, at the moment, the reason, and I can tell you this from first-hand experience, the reason we don't have an agreement at the moment between Palestinians and Israelis is not to do with the religious leaders on either side, right? It's a lot more to do with the political leaders, so it's my branch that has to take the blame for that. And therefore, what I would say is, I actually think that yes, of course, a lot of these conflicts have religious roots. I actually think it's possible for religious leaders to play a positive part in trying to resolve those. But in the end, it's for politics and religion to try and work out a way in which religion, in a world of globalization that is pushing people together, can play a positive rather than negative role. And if we concentrated on that, rather than trying to drive religion out, which is futile, but concentrate instead on how we actually get people of different faiths working together, learning from each other and living with each other, I think it would be a more productive mission. Thank you.
Okay, let's... question. We like the applauding, so please continue that throughout the debate. Let's take a written question. My producers are telling me that we have a written question. We'll get that on the screen. And Christopher, this is for you to start with. Interesting one. America is both one of the most religious countries in the world and also one of the most democratic and pluralistic, both now and arguably through much of its history. How do you explain that seeming paradox?
Relatively simply, the United States has uniquely a constitution that forbids the government to take sides in any religious matter, or to sponsor a church, or to adopt any form of faith itself. As a result of which, anyone who wants to practice their religion in America has to do it as a volunteer. It's what de Tocqueville wrote about so well in his Democracy in America, ever since Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Baptists of Danbury, Connecticut, during his tenure as president, saying, you'll be familiar with the phrase, I'm sure, rest assured, because they'd written to him out of their fear of persecution in Connecticut, rest assured that there will ever be a wall of separation between the church and the state in this country. And the maintenance of that wall, which people like me have to defend every day against those who want garbage taught in schools and pseudoscience in the name of Christ, and other atrocities. The maintenance of that wall is the guarantee of the democracy. By the way, for a bonus, can anyone tell me who the Baptists of Danbury, Connecticut thought was persecuting them? The Congregationalists of Danbury, Connecticut. Well done. Also, that argues, by the way, for the existence of a very small but real fan base of mine somewhere in this room. Yes, now, it doesn't seem to matter very much now, but it mattered then. Give those Congregationalists enough power, as they did have in Connecticut. And just you see how unfurry they look compared to how docile they behave. Now we've disciplined them. Thank you.
Well, Tony, let me come to you with that same question. Is it just a case of American exceptionalism, or is this balance between pluralism and faith that's been achieved in America something that you're either seeing in other parts of the world, or a model that could be exported globally?
Well, I think that what most people want to see is a situation where people of faith are able to speak in the public sphere but are not able to dictate. And that is a reasonable balance, and I think that most people would accept. But I think, again, what I would say about examples of where you get religious people that are fanatical in the views that they want to press on others. Fanaticism is not, as I say, it's not a wholly owned subsidiary of religion, I'm afraid. It can happen outside of religion too. So the question is, how do people of if you like, good faith, who believe in pluralist democracy, how do we ensure that people who hold faith deeply are able to participate in society and have the same ability to do that as everyone else, without being kind of denigrated, but at the same time have to respect the fact that ultimately democracy is about the will of the people and the will of the people as a whole. So I think that most people can get that balance right, and we are very lucky actually in our countries, because we are in a situation where people of different faiths are free to practice their faith as they like. And that is, in my view, an absolutely fundamental part of democracy. And it's something that people of religious faith have to be very clear about and stand up and do. And one of the reasons why, for me, I think it's actually important for people of religious faith to have people like Christopher challenge us and say, okay, this is how we see religion. Now you get out there and tell us how it's different, and where it isn't different, how you're going to make it so. And I think that's a positive and good thing. All I ask for is that where people of faith are speaking in the public sphere, then people accept that we have a right to do that, and that sometimes we do that actually because we believe in the things that we're saying, and we're not trying to subvert or change democracy. On the contrary, we simply want to be part of it, and our voice is a voice that has a right to be heard alongside the voice of others.
Well, I see Christopher writing furiously, so I'm going to ask him to come back on that point.
Well, I hadn't anything specially to add there. I think I'd rather give another person a chance for a question.
Okay. Well, it's a question that was debated for you, Christopher, on monkdebates.com in the lead-up to this evening. On our discussion board, many people saying that religion provides a sense of community. In modern societies where immersed in a consumer culture, more often than not living alongside fellow citizens who are more maybe self-directed than other-directed, what do you say about the pure community function of religion? Isn't that a public good, a valid public good of religious belief?
Absolutely. I say good luck to it. And the way I phrase it in my book, it's available at fine bookstores everywhere, is that I propose a pact with the faithful. Say, I'll take it again, I'll quote from the great Thomas Jefferson, that I don't mind if my neighbor believes in 15 gods or in none. He neither by that breaks my leg or picks my pocket. I would echo that and say that as long as you don't want your religion taught to my children in school, given a government subsidy, imposed on me by violence, any of these things, you are fine by me. I would prefer not even to know what it is that you do in that church of yours. In fact, if you force it on my attention, I will consider it a breach of that pact. Have your own bloody Christmas, and so on. Do your slaughtering, if possible, in an abattoir, and don't mutilate the genitals of your children. Because then I'm afraid it gets within the ambit of law. All right, so don't you think that's reasonably pluralistic and communitarian of me? I think it is. Why is it a vain hope on my part? Why is that? Has this pact ever been honoured by the other side? Of course not.